So tonight's keynote speaker is Kristina Canfield, the Executive Director for the Association of Recovery and Higher Education, or ARHE. With more than 200 member institutions across the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, and most recently Japan, ARHE is the only association exclusively representing collegiate recovery programs and collegiate recovery communities, the faculty and staff who support them, and the students who represent them. Kristina is very passionate about the field of collegiate recovery. Her vision is that one day every institution of higher education offers support for students in or seeking recovery so that they can feel supported no matter their chosen path to recover. Kristina, we welcome you to the stage.
I'm so excited to be here tonight. Back in my home area, I currently reside in Birmingham, Alabama, but I grew up right here in Hampton Roads. And so we could go ahead and I even put a mask on my headshot. She's very festive. As you stated, I am the Executive Director for the Association of Recovery and Higher Education. I promise I'm going to tie that into what's happening tonight as well. And who we are, and in case you don't understand what a collegiate recovery program is, these are programs embedded within institutions of higher education that support students who are in or seeking recovery from addiction. Virginia is really lucky. You have a statewide expansion program supported by the state government. Nearly most of the institutions of higher education in Virginia do have or have started working toward a collegiate recovery program, but none of them are in the 757. So if there are any higher ed folks in here, especially if you happen to represent Christopher Newport University, we kind of need to make that change, okay? There is state funding for this. And I am very, very passionate about this because no student should ever have to choose between their recovery from addiction and their path of education. We should never have to sacrifice one for the other. So that's what I do, and I'm really passionate about it, but I don't know that I'm really here to talk to you about ARHE, though if you're really passionate about college students, I'm happy to do that too. Next slide. So please, let me reintroduce myself. My name is Kristina Canfield, and I'm a woman in long-term recovery. And what that means for me is that since February 11th, 2005, I have not had to use substances. I went through a lot of pictures trying to figure out how can I tell my story. Mom, sorry for the picture, but it's a really good one. So that's me in my mom's lap with my grandmother and my great-grandmother. I would have my great-grandmother who lived in South Norfolk for 26 years of my life. My Nanny Ree just passed away 2 years ago, actually yesterday. I was surrounded by family. That picture in the middle is me braiding my Uncle Kenny's hair. The little girl you see with me, that's my baby sister who I still annoy. Thank you. Middle school, I took dance at Pauline Bradshaw's School of Dance in Chesapeake, Virginia for 18 years. I was a pretty happy person, pretty happy kid. As a matter of fact, my parents, who are all here, wave parents, hi. They'll tell you I was the kid that made all their friends when I have kids. I really liked to be the center of attention. It would be no surprise I would go on to be a theater kid, none at all. I went to Western Branch Middle School and high school. I was born in Portsmouth and grew up in Western Branch. Matter of fact, one of my childhood friends, Jess, is here tonight as well. I think I was a pretty good teenager. I was pretty moody. And I like to believe that out of all of my siblings, I caused the least amount of trouble pre-18 years old. Okay, I made mostly straight A's except that one B in history, and we will come back to that, I promise. Next slide. So I went to college. First generation college student. Yes, that is something to celebrate. This is one of the only known pictures of me at Christopher Newport University. in August of 2001. And Jessica and I were reminiscing right before I came up here. We are really glad social media did not exist when we were teenagers. Yes. I am glad that my life was not like followed at that time. What you don't see in this picture is how terrified I am. It's exciting. I'm going off to college. I'm doing what's expected of me. I'm a really bright kid. And I'm only 45 minutes from home, but I moved into the residence hall. Now I work with a lot of college students because on top of being executive director of ARHE, I'm a trained preventionist. So I do a lot of work still with high school and college students talking about the use of drugs and alcohol. And one of the things I always say to them is that we do you such a disservice as young adults. We do such a disservice to our emerging adults, to our teenagers, to our adolescents, because when we go off to college like this, we like to say things like, well, these are the best years of your life. That is rude. Please don't say that. As I tell my students all the time, I hope you don't peak at 22. I don't care what Taylor Swift says, peaking at 22, not a good idea. I hope that these are great years. I hope you look back on them with fondness and excitement, but I hope they're not the best years. So think of every movie you've ever seen about college. They all have one thing in common: partying. But partying without consequences. And as one of my favorite TV shows would like to say, there's a time and a place for everything, and it's called college. That was a South Park quote, by the way. Go back, season 4, I promise it's there. That's what you don't see. I had already spent years in middle school and high school trying to figure out who the heck I was, what I liked, making friends, just trying to like myself. And now I'm here all over again. Will they like me? Will I fit in? Will I make good grades? By the way, I got a bachelor's in history, so that one being history, yeah. Good change. So we tell, next slide, we tell people, you know, these are the best years of your life, and these are some really great pictures. I look like I'm having a lot of fun. That is single-handedly the best Halloween costume I have ever made in my life. Okay? Those are some of my college roommates from CNU. But there's something really important you don't see here. You don't see a young girl struggling with depression. You don't see the self-harm. You don't see the anxiety. You don't see the phone calls to my mom asking for help because I was struggling with suicidality. I was struggling. That picture where all of my cousins and my sister are piled on top of me, I am so hungover, I'm still drunk. By that picture on the bottom, I'm high. I remember my aunt whispering to me, I can smell the alcohol on you. And me denying it. I looked really, really, really happy there. But that happy was a mask. It was to tell you, I'm fine. I'm okay. And if my grades started to slip and people started to question what was happening, oh, I just buckle right back down. I'm fine. I've got this. Next slide. So the thing the movies get wrong, the thing the TV shows get wrong, is that there are consequences. It isn't all just wrapped up in a pretty bow at the end. It's not just a funny story to tell your friends. There are real consequences, and so what came next was what we never could have predicted. Or maybe we could have. Years of struggling with addiction, dropping out of school, eventually becoming homeless, living in my car, selling my car for just one more, sleeping in a pile of my clothes on a cold sidewalk. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen over years. It happened over months, maybe a year, maybe 2. But it happened. And this was the only picture I really have to describe that time, mostly because social media did not exist during that time. We were just getting digital cameras. So I don't have a lot of pictures, and I'm okay with that. It all lives in here and in here. I remember it very clearly. It was like a hurricane moving through people's lives. It doesn't really matter all of the details from that time, but there is one story that I want to make sure I tell you. And that's about the last night of me using. So the last night of me using, I'm living on the streets in Chesapeake. And the boy I was with said, I'm going to go find some place for us to stay. 2005 was one of the coldest winters we had experienced in a long time, by the way. I'm going to go find some place warm for us to stay. And he never came back. I'm sick. The withdrawals are setting in. I'm not okay. And so I get up and I start walking, and I keep walking. Eventually I find myself on an overpass in Portsmouth. And I'm standing there, and I'm cold, and I'm shivering, and I'm sick, and I'm lost, and I'm done. And I knew in my heart I was done. Because I was either gonna die, or something was gonna change. And so I stood on that overpass, and I screamed out into the world, you know what, God? My whole life they told me you were there, so prove it now. Prove it now. Because I can't do this anymore. And eventually in these pre-dawn hours, I would continue to walk, and eventually I would look up and I would look around me, and I would realize I was in my grandparents' neighborhood. And I would run. And I couldn't feel my legs because it was so cold outside. If my grandmother was still alive, she would tell you her side of that story. But at 5:30 in the morning, I showed up at my grandparents' front door and I knocked. And my grandfather opened the door and he said the words that would forever change my life. Come on in, gal. All of my parents are here tonight. They'll tell you I was a wreck. I went back to detox for the second time in as many months in Portsmouth. By the way, detox just means psychiatric hospital 20 years ago. And my grandmother would come visit me a couple of days later. And she said, you know what, I don't know what happened that night. I don't know what happened that night. You showed up at my door. I don't know if I want to know what happened that night, but I need to tell you what happened that night. And I said, okay. She said, every day of your life, I have prayed for you by name. Every day of every one of my grandchildren's lives, I pray for them by name. And for months, I kept praying that you would put the drugs down, you would leave the boy, you would come home, you would realize you were hurting us all. And you never did. And you just kept hurting us. And I started to get angry. And so the night you showed up at my door, Kristina, I changed my prayer. I was like, oh, good Lord, Nanny, what did you pray for? And she said, I prayed you would be all alone. You would be all alone, and you would have nowhere else to go. And then you showed up on my door. And that's important, because it was a moment, it was a glimmer of hope. It was one moment that made me pause and think, just maybe there's something out there that gives the tiniest crap about me. Maybe my life is worth saving. Maybe it's going to be okay. Next slide. That's me 1 year in recovery back in 2006. There's a whole lot not pictured here, y'all. The statistics are that in the first year of recovery, 80% of people will return to use. Every odd is against us. Every single one. Systems, situations, mental health, all of it. The odds are against us. So there's a whole lot. I didn't do it by myself. What's not pictured here is the way I was loved and hugged in the first 12-step meeting when I came back from my relapse. What's not pictured here are the people who never gave up hope because their hope fed my hope. What's not pictured here is my brother hugging me the night before my sentencing hearing when I was facing 30 years in prison to tell me he still loved me and that he was there for me. What's not here are my parents. What's not here is my community, because I didn't do it alone. Next slide. I went back to college. I had to leave Virginia. Sorry, y'all. I needed to go do something for myself. I needed to make a new story. And so I ended up at Ohio University. Go Bobcats, by the way. Yes. Yes. And my dad and my stepmom, when I'm getting my bachelor's degree in history, that 1B can suck it, okay? I'm just saying. I wanted to be a high school history teacher. My criminal record would send me down a different path, by the way. I got my master's in education, focusing in student affairs and higher education, because I knew I wanted to work with college students. Because if I could change the trajectory of one student coming behind me, then I could change the world. And that's important. We don't change the world by going out there and changing the world. We go out there and change the world one person at a time. One hand at a time. Next slide. This is just a representation of what I've been able to do since. These are some of my students from over the last 15 years, my colleagues, me at SAMHSA talking with government officials about how important it is to support young people in recovery, including adolescents. Me meeting with the head of the Office of National Drug Control Policy, Dr. Gupta, who was just an amazing ally, Me with my staff at ARHE, and just over the years, all of these lives. I want you to remember this slide, okay? Because this slide represents all of the students whose lives I've had a chance to touch. Next slide. And this is my daughter, Scarlett, who will probably tell you she is named for the scarlet and gray of the Ohio State University, by the way. Sorry. Look, her father wouldn't let me name her Scarlett Elizabeth because her initials would have been SEC. The Big Ten is very serious. It's very serious. But I chose these two pictures intentionally. She's not here with us tonight. She's at home with her dad in Alabama. But the one picture shows her personality. That goofy personality, that definitely comes from me. But that one where she's standing, that's school picture day. School picture day, which happened to be on Collegiate Recovery Day, the anniversary of ARHE. And I said, oh, kiddo, you don't have to wear your ARHE shirt to school. You can wear whatever you want. It's picture day. She was like, huh? I'm wearing my shirt. I'm really proud of what my mom does. My mom's a superhero. I'm wearing my shirt. And I cried. I cried. Next slide. So why does all of this matter? What does this have to do with all of you here tonight? Why is this random girl telling us this story? Well, pictured there with me is journalist and author Sam Quinones, who I had the chance to meet. And some years ago, Sam wrote a book called Dreamland. And if you haven't had the chance to read Dreamland, number one, you now have an assignment, okay? Number two, at its core, Dreamland, which is really about the rise of the opioid epidemic. Sam set out to figure out why are a bunch of middle-class white kids dying from heroin overdoses. This is really weird. What is happening in our country? How did black tar heroin come onto the scene? Sam was an investigative journalist. He's amazing, by the way. If you ask Sam, if you ever have a conversation with Sam, he'll tell you he really expected this book to flop. He didn't think anybody would want to read it. He said, no one's going to care. Sam became one of my favorite accidental activists because the book didn't flop. It lit a fire, and it blew the lid open, and it gave us something to talk about. But at its core, it's about the loss of community. It's called Dreamland because Dreamland was the name of a pool in southeastern Ohio. And when the jobs went away, and the people started to move away, and the community started to fall apart, and the pool closed, the drugs came in. It's about the loss of community. It's about how the loss of community allowed the opioid epidemic to take root and to flourish, because in the time in our history when we are arguably have more access to each other than we probably really should, we are more disconnected than ever before. That the only thing that can save us from ourselves is this. It's community. Every single person has a story, just like you've heard tonight. Sam went out in the world and he found those stories and he told them. Every single one of us, every student I meet has a story just like mine. Every person that JCOC helps has a story. And they are begging to be seen. They are begging to be heard. And so, next slide, I'm going to tell you one more story. So, I'm going to ask you all to trust me and close your eyes. Or you can look down, okay? Just close your eyes, trust me on this. And I want you to imagine the old JCOC campus. Got it in your minds? I want you to imagine it's a really cold winter morning. The sun is bright, but man, that air coming off the ocean has a bite to it. It's frigid. I want you to imagine a young girl walking through the door into the office. Her powder blue 1970s style suitcase, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I want you to feel her anxiety and how palpable it is. I want you to see the tears rolling down her face. I want you to feel how scared she is. The staff is doing her intake. But this is a time when drug screens were required to live at the JCOC. And that drug screen comes back positive for cannabis. And the staff have a discussion and they make a really critical decision because this girl has nowhere to go. And they know that if they turn her away, what might come next? And they make a decision in that moment to let her stay. As long as she keeps testing and eventually tests negative. You feel the relief. You watch her cry. You give her a hug and you tell her, it's gonna be all right. Now open your eyes. Cook for me? That girl was me. That girl was me. 20 years ago, on a cold February morning, my father picked me up from detox, drove me to the JCOC, and dropped me off. And an entire new world of possibilities opened. Because of one moment, one critical decision made by the staff at that time, that housing was way more important than my positive drug screen for cannabis. And it saved my life. And that one decision has rippled throughout the world for the last 20 years. Those students, remember I told you to remember that slide. Every single one of those students, every single one of my colleagues, every single person who is attached to any one of the collegiate recovery programs, my family, my daughter, my friends, my community, all of them have been touched by the JCOC. And so when I celebrated, yes, please. When I celebrated 20 years, I looked up Todd and I sent an email just to say thank you. Because my gratitude was overwhelming. Because the next 20 years could not have happened if it hadn't been for that one moment. So remember that tonight. Remember that. Every life you touch ripples across time, across borders, across people, across generations. And I was one of those too. Thank you so much for having me here tonight.